Gender studies, as we know, is an interdisciplinary field that spans many topics from gender identity and gender roles to the gender relations and power dynamics within the society. As such, it is possible to speak about a wide range of topics within the gender studies, which you all are aware about: gender identity, gender roles, gender-based discrimination, representation of the gender in media, then gender-based violence, sexuality, intersectionality, health issues with the gender, language issues with the gender, religion and gender, and gender and law, and of course, the emerging field that is gender and technology. So I thought to speak more on this intersection because other things which are there, which are the issues related to gender, many more things have been said about that. But the coming up area is of the gender and technology. But before that, a little bit about the gender and feminist movements. So gender, as you all know, it is a socially constructed concept that describes the behavioral, cultural, and psychological qualities or individualities of the gender that are associated with a particular sex. And you know, it is determined by a variety of factors that includes biological, environmental, and social influences. And gender roles are typically defined by the societies and cultures. And they may vary from one society or culture to another society and culture. Gender that indicates the characteristics and the position, the roles of men and women in all social relationships, including that of LGBTQ also. So we say that gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for men and women. While you all may be knowing that sex indicates biological and physiological characteristics of men and women, people are born as male and female. The first gender, the second gender, the third gender, now these are the things which we all know. So to put it in another way, male and female are the sex categories, while masculine and feminine are the gender categories. Gender sensitivity that helps to generate respect for individual regardless of sex, that is required. Gender has a significant influence on our social structures and institutions, from the way we form relationships to the way we are treated in the workplace, we are treated in the society, we are treated in the gatherings. Gender also shapes our culture and beliefs, our expectations of ourselves and the others. So gender can determine the opportunities and limitations which we have, as well as our access to resources and social powers. Now, for the purpose of gender studies, we need to see the feminist movement, their struggles, and the four waves as mentioned by Martha Rampton. Starting from 19th and early
can I request you to kindly unmute?
20th century in the West, basically this wave was resulted as the struggle of women regarding the right to vote. We know that in India, with the enforcement of the constitution, there was no discrimination regarding right to vote, but in West, the women were not given the right to vote. So this first wave was regarding their right to vote. That was the struggle. In 1960s onwards, we see the second wave was emerged, and this wave was basically for the minority groups, empowerment over issues like reproductive rights and sexuality, and also against the backdrop of the civil rights and anti-war sentiments. Then the third wave of the feminism that began somewhere in 1990s, and this was the movement which deconstructed the idea of universal women. And with the focus of this third wave was moving from communal objectives to the individual rights. The Everyday Sexism Project, that was an online initiative which was launched by British feminist writer Laura Bates. That was somewhere in 2012. That can be said to be the fourth wave of feminism. And this focus of the fourth wave was on the fight against social injustice, wherein campaigns are based by using the technology. Technology that is through social media platforms. There are so many social media platforms. All of us are aware about those platforms. So this fourth wave, which was started somewhere in 21st century, that is a point of discussion, which is making the women to come in the mainstream. At the same time, there are certain negative points also of this fourth wave. If we land in India, then we find that the foundation of the Indian feminism, the first wave was laid by the reform and anti-colonial movements of the 19th century, with the aim to include the women in the public life. That includes their political rights, access to education, access to employment. So that was the time in 19th century which started. And then Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, these were the social reformers of their time. And they argued against the ideas of the violences, against the idea of the discrimination which were being faced by the women at that time, particularly sati pratha, then polygamy, the child marriages, widow remained unmarried. So these were some of the things which were running at that time. And then the Brahma Samaj also gave some push to the mass education of the women, of the girls. And you see that these movements resulted into the enactment of Widow Remarriage Act, the abolition of Sati Act, and many more acts for the women causes, through which the status of the women may be uplifted in the society. Then after 1950, with the enforcement of the Constitution of India, a systematic development plan to resolve the social issues for women that began. Particularly, you see Article 14 and Article 15, Clause 3 of the Indian Constitution. That gives the assurance of the equality as a fundamental right. And particularly, if you see Article 15, Clause 3 in the Constitution, that is an obligation on the state to make special provisions for the women in equality clause as a fundamental right. So by virtue of Article 15, Clause 3 and Article 14, that is equality right or fundamental right to equality, the Constitution tried to enforce this plan for the women equality in a systematic manner. Then the second wave of the feminism became broader as the intersectionality of the caste, class, and culture. These all were recognized by the state. And the claim for the equal rights in marriage, divorce, succession, and economic opportunities, they all were there. Along with the demand for that no dowry should be there, and the protection from and the prevention of the sexual violences. So that came in, and the movement entered into the private domain also. So the first was thing regarding the political rights, the right to education and right to economic opportunities. The second wave was relating to the rights which are related in the private domain. And by virtue of this second wave, we see that the Hindu Marriage Act, the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, Succession Act, then Minority and Guardianship Act. So all these Hindu Code Bill, basically of 1950s, that was there, and these were all enacted to provide the equal rights to the women. Then in India, we see the third wave that was initiated somewhere in 1980. And the Indian feminism that was started with the 5-year plan. And that was focused on the health of the women, that was focused on the employment and education of the women. So the rights were given to the women and the provisions were made in the 5-year plan. And the NGOs also, the non-governmental organizations, they came into existence, which were basically led by the women to support the other women for raising their economic status, for raising their social status, basically to empower them and to integrate them into the mainstream. Then the period of fourth wave that emerged in the West also in 2012 onwards, and at the similar time in India also we can see, because it is having the impact in India due to the modern technology and by the use of the social media. And that has made the entire globe a village. So now we are here for the cyber feminism, a form of the feminism that focuses on the intersection of gender and technology. It emerged in the 21st century, as I told you, as a response of the ways in which the internet and the other forms of the digital technology, these were shaping the lives of the women, and also the ways in which they were being represented and treated in the online world. And cyber feminism, you see, specifically it addresses the ways in which the gender and technology intersect and how this impacts the women's lives also. It is also tend to be more inclusive and intersectional in its approach, because it recognizes the issues of gender, the issues of race, class, and other forms of the identity that overlaps and intersects in complex ways. So we see that cyber feminism is seen as that is making the use of the social media to provide accessibility, encouraging diversity, and also it inspires the leadership in the movement to provide an opportunity to the policymakers or to create a more inclusive future. Which was, you see, was lacking when there was no digital revolution. The spreading and the dissemination of the knowledge and information across borders through the social media, that also enables the transnational and international feminist networks. So the things which were happening in West that were coming to India at a very late time, but because of the social media, internet use, digital transformation, these things are coming through this international feminist networks to India very recently. Now, some key themes and the issues addressed by the cyber feminists, that includes the gender and technology, which is examining how technology is shaping or it is shaped by gender and how it impacts the gender roles and relations. Then you see online violences against women, which are addressing the ways in which the women are targeted and harmed online, like harassment, stalking, voyeurism, and other forms of the abuse are there. Then at the same time, another theme which can be discussed in the gender and technology is the digital labor and exploitation, which is looking at the ways in which the women are undervalued, as rightly told by Professor Muzammil sir in his address, because women are undervalued every time. They are given less salary for the equal work or then more than equal work. And they are exploited in the digital economy also, such as through unpaid or underpaid labor, or the lack of the representation in the leadership position, as told that there are just 2% women in the leadership. Representation and visibility in the digital realm, that is also exploring the ways in which women are represented and they are seen in the digital world. Like issues of the visibility and representation in media, advertisements, and other forms of digital content. So these are the issues which requires discussion in the gender and technology. However, with cyber feminism that is becoming the norm, it is also important to consider who controls the discourse and how it relates to race, class, and other social structures. We see that internet culture has paved the way for the use of humor and other creative satirical formats also in cyber feminism. There are online campaigns and petitions also bloggings and social media activism, then hacktivism and digital resistance, virtual communities and online networks. You see the hashtagging. The feminists are ugly hashtag on Twitter. That was a creation of the US-based feminists somewhere in 2014. And that was challenging the perception of what is considered as beautiful and what is considered as attractive. So there was a great issue and great discussion on that hashtag of feminists are ugly. Then you see, and you must be remembering the Twitter 2017 Me Too movement against the sexual harassment that was led by the American activist Tarana Burke. So that also got this worldwide popularity through Twitter. In India, this Me Too movement also gained momentum in 2018. So you see, with this advancement of the technology, these waves which were starting from the West, and then we were having that in India with this technology, the time period has been now lapsed, and now we are having a similar types of these movements in the entire globe. Then micro rebellions, the the when women refuse are few movements in the West. Then again, you see in Nigeria, it was 2014, Bring Back Our Girls. There was a case of 276 schoolgirls who have been kidnapped by Boko Haram. So this was an international campaign on Twitter for launching and pressurizing the authorities there to bring back those girls who have been kidnapped. Then in India, if you see, then the women are using these digital tools to demand accountability from their governments, corporations, and leaders also. These digital movements in India, they are also relying on the social media platforms. In 2017, if you remember, there was one movement on Twitter that was Lahu Ka Lagan hashtag on Twitter, and that was against 12% tax on the sanitary napkins, with the period tax being scrapped in 2018. Then again, a Nirbhaya movement hashtag that was hashtag Delhi Brave Heart, and that were used by millions in support of the justice for victim. And you must recall that the 23-year-old girl that was a rape victim that was murdered and raped. As a result of the rape laws in India, those laws were amended also, so as to increase and expand the definition of rape. And the punishment was also revised so as to give the life imprisonment and death penalty as a case may be. And this is because of the social media movement and by the use of the gender and technology, this Daily Brave Heart hashtag. Then you see this digital activism that allows the wider feminist discussions. In 2013, it was acid attack survivor Lakshmi Agarwal that gathered thousands of signatures through an online petition. There were more than 27,000 signatures, and that hashtag Stop Acid Sale, that is to curb the sale of acid. And because of this movement online petition, where you find thousands and thousands signatures in favor of this Stop Acid Sale, the Supreme Court has to come forward, and law was also changed, and stringent punishments were determined for the offenses for this acid attack. The Indian Penal Code was amended so as to bring this offense, acid attack, as an offense also. Then online activism that can mobilize a large population in seconds, and then the offline activism we all know. Online or digital activism is an interactive approach wherein different groups of the people can participate through online blogs, petitions, views, and articles. They are not only the consumer of the contents, but they are also becoming the creator of the contents. But the point for consideration is that the disparity in internet access, you all may be aware about the digital divide within geographical locations and the socioeconomic class structure, the language barriers are also there. That may act and is acting as a barrier in the reaching out to the masses. then the digital feminist activity can be exclusionist also, because dominant cultures and the languages have a significant role in selecting who can be heard, and that can be included, who can be seen in the movement. Further, if we see this online harassment, bullying, and sexual exploitation, that has become a regular feature in the digital space. Everyone must be, experienced of the cyber crimes in one way or the other. So there are challenges and criticisms of cyber feminisms also, like accusation of elitism and exclusion, the limited reach and impact of the online activism, the potential for the digital surveillance and control, and therefore the need to consider intersectionality and inclusivity. That is very important. And as some authors argue also that cyber feminism has created a rift between the ideologies of the older and the younger generations of the feminists. So that also needs some more discussion on that point. What may be good for the other group of the feminists, that may not be good for the younger group of the feminists. That is also a generational gap in this technology is coming into picture. Then finally, to promote the gender justice in digital sphere, I must say that one must educate oneself on the issues which are related to the gender and technology, and use your platform to amplify the voices and the perspectives of those who are unheard, unseen, particularly the marginalized groups, and speak out against the things which are creating violence, that is online violence and harassment, and work to create the safer and more inclusive online spaces for all. Share maximum information and resources with others, which you are having with you, about the gender and the technological issues. And finally, practice good digital citizenship. So with these words, I would like to thank the organizer, particularly Professor Anisul Rahman sir, for giving me the opportunity to share some of my views on the gender and technology cyber feminism as the fourth wave of the feminist, which is of course a discourse for the gender study and which is coming up, and everyone must be aware about, because we are in the virtual world now, and this program is also going on virtually. So we all must know as to how to use the technology, how we can be good citizenship, how we can be a good citizen digitally, how we can inform the others regarding various types of the violences and offenses, and how to save ourselves from being the victim of the digital activism. So once again, thanks to Dr. Rahman sir for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Priti Saxena. Thank you so much for so wonderful deliberation. You have touched